Johnson, the veteran of nearly 130 games and one of the great point guards in Cincinnati history, Troy Copain. That threesome plays their final home game tonight. Adam Amin, Len Elmore on hand. A big one for Cincinnati to try to keep pace with SMU, still with an outside shot of getting a share of the American Conference Championship. But Lenny, perhaps an even bigger game for Houston. A win gets them the 3 seed in next Thursday's American Conference Tournament. And this is pretty big for their potential NCAA tournament hopes, too.
Absolutely. Despite winning 7 of their last 8, slim pickings in the conference for a signature win. A win here puts Houston back in the conversation. You take a look at the next 4 out, it at least moves them into the first 4 out and possibly beyond.
Kyle Washington, Kyle Meyer up for the tip, and off we go. We got Stanford, Colorado in the Pac-12. Bill Walton's going to get weird. We're going to have some fun here in Cincinnati first. Here is
the game in Colorado.
As a matter of fact, Lenny, there are some interesting photos from Boulder today of Bill Walton having some fun. Zach Tobler. How about that for the walk-on on senior night to break the scoring seal?
That is absolutely a memory to be cemented in Zach Tobler and his family's mind. Starting tonight, senior night, getting that first bucket.
How cool is that?
You see Cincinnati in the 2-3 zone right now, really looking to swarm anything in the post.
Galen Robinson ties the game. Cincinnati and Houston are the 2 highest scoring teams in the American Conference. They met earlier this season. It was a 67-58 Cincinnati win in Houston. Washington misses the 3, and Rob Gray, the leading scorer in the American Conference, will get the rebound. Tobler will commit the foul, and let's see if he comes off the floor for Gary Clark.
Tell you what, you may not get the minutes during the game, but a guy like Zach Tobler works his butt off during practice, day in, day out for 4 years. His teammates certainly recognize that.
The walkout who grew up a Cincinnati fan from across the river in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. He was going to go play D3 basketball, but instead, his uncle, a huge Cincinnati fan, convinced him to try out for the Bearcats, and he's been a walk-on on this club. Good story for Tobler to get the first 2. The last 5 belong to Houston. Those 3 for Rob Gray.
Yeah, Houston 9 3-pointers a game at 40%, and also less than 10 turnovers per game. Cougars can spring on you quickly.
Good defense out of the perimeter by Davis. Robinson dribbled it off of his foot, and Gary Clark in off the bench scoops it up.
Rare unforced turnover by Houston, averaging just a little bit less than 10 per game.
And you mentioned it right on cue. Less than 10 turnovers per game is 4th in the American 4th in the country, I should say, 4th fewest. Mick Cronin coming off a tough loss the other day on the road at UCF. Taco Fall, the 7'6" sophomore, made it very difficult on this high-powered offense for Mick Cronin to really run their stuff. They were held to their season lows in points and field goal percentage. Just 49 points, and they shot 29.6% in that 4-point loss.
Well, we talk about the American Athletic Conference Championship. That's a glimpse of maybe things to come. Outstanding defense on a consistent basis. Central Florida, you know, they've been up in the top tier nationally all year, and a lot of it has to do with Big Taco Fall, but that's the kind of stuff that wins championships.
I'll give you a note here, Lenny. Cincinnati is 7th in the country in scoring defense, but they're 3rd in their own conference. That tells you not only about UCF, which is up there at the top, but SMU as well, and the quality of defense in the American this year. Washington clears the defensive rebound for the Bearcats.
Interesting to see if Kyle Washington continues to stay out there on the perimeter. Has a great opportunity to go inside against Meyer. Well, that time he didn't have to go inside. Meyer fouls him anyway.
That's the second Meyer foul. Kelvin Sampson already has the jacket off. 20 wins this year for Houston in just his 3rd season. He had such a turnaround job trying to build off of year 2. Remember all those players that left before his first season. Tayshaun Thomas transferred to Oklahoma. Daniel House ended up transferring to Texas A&M. High quality guys. So Not that the cupboard was bare, but Kelvin Sampson has had to do some rebuilding. He's done a fabulous job for Houston this year as Washington has the field goal.
Against Devin Davis, Kyle Washington a couple inches advantage, but inside is where he's going to make his mark.
Knocked out of the hands by Clark. Well defended against Damian Dotson, and it'll be another Houston turnover. So the Bearcats come in with an RPI of 14. Houston is sitting at 53. So obviously a road win here would be very big for the resume of the Cougars. 6-4 in true road games this year, including 6-2 in the American Conference. And Houston has won its last 3 road games against Tulane, Tulsa, and on the road at Memphis.
And at the risk of offending all those people who talk about there's no such thing as an eye test, you beat a team like Cincinnati on their home floor after they've won 25 straight, somebody's going to open their eyes.
Washington with his second bucket to put Cincinnati in front by a pair.
Actually, I wasn't worried about offending anybody.
Well, I was going to say, when's the last time you worried about offending somebody? As Kalen Robinson takes it in, draws the bump, and he'll have 2 shots.
It was a civil thing to say.
I mean, you do have a way with words, Lenny. I will tell you that right now. As Copain picks up his first foul. This is a really, really good Houston offense against a really, really good Cincinnati defense. It's such a fun matchup tonight. And I don't think a lot of people around the country would look at Houston or maybe think of Houston off the top of their heads of, you know, for lack of a better, I don't like the term, but mid-major teams that really deserve a shot. Upper echelon mid-majors, or if you want to throw the American into the high major category, depending on your perspective, I'm all for it. This is a really good team that a lot of people would be impressed by if they looked at their full body of work.
Yeah, and when they think of Houston, obviously they think of that high-powered offense, the ability to shoot the 3, but they forget 16 points off turnovers, plus 6 against opponents. You know, they play excellent help side defense, and that's the kind of thing that helps them explode.
Their defense forces the first Cincinnati turnover of the night. 13 points in the first 4 minutes.
ESPN's exclusive presentation of college basketball is brought to you by Hyundai. And Bass Pro Shops, your adventure starts here.
We are 1 week away from the start of the Frontier Communications American Championship on the ESPN networks. Lenny and I will be there for part of that tournament, and if the season were to end today, this is what it would look like, but a lot to decide. SMU has a chance to clinch the 1 seed with a win at home against Tulsa tonight. Houston here in Cincinnati has a chance to lock up the 3 seed with a win. UCF is on the road at USF tonight, and they're still battling for a chance at the 3 seed as well. And on Sunday, a pretty big game. UConn will take on Cincinnati for the 2nd time this year in Hartford, and that could end up being a big game in terms of UConn because they're right on that cut line for the top 5.
Yeah, and certainly for them to get a favorable seed playing in their home arena certainly builds some confidence for the Huskies. But when you take a look at that bracket, the 3 severe long shots that I think that have a chance. You know, we're talking about Temple, Tulsa, particularly. You know, they could step in and do some damage if they get to that next night.
And UConn still needs to push, even just for a potential NIT bid. Obviously, they're thinking much bigger than that, having dealt with all their injuries this year and battling back.
But the advantages of playing in your home court, also having a point guard like Jalen Adams, as I said, point guard so important in a tournament setting.
Sophomore Jacob Evans has been red hot as of late. He picks up a 2 to put Cincinnati in front by a 3.
And I guess UConn would know about point guards in a tournament setting.
They've
over
had
the
good
years.
ones. Tipped alive into the corner, and it's grabbed by Kevin Johnson. He and Copain are on the floor, the 2 seniors that are in the main rotation. Washington is off to a good start, working against Bertrand Collie. And a foul called underneath by Ron Groover. Foul will be against Washington.
Well, Jacob Evans, you talk about senior day, the loss of Troy Copain next year. This is his team. Jacob Evans, he'll inherit, a bunch of guys who are experienced, savvy, and to go along with what he's been able to do this season offensively. 26 double-figure games out of the 29 that he's played. 5th in the conference in three-point field goal percentage. And over the last 6, he's averaged 14 points. So his contributions are many, but next year they're going to be counting on him big time.
And he's guarding Rob Gray, the leading scorer in the conference right now. Shot clock inside at 10. Gray lost his footing and lost the ball. Copain into Knowles, and he draws the foul on Danrad. So the rematch comes our way from Chapel Hill on Saturday, part of our Sonic Blockbusters. Duke with an 8-point win at Cameron. Now North Carolina with so much at stake, a potential 1 seed and the outright ACC championship. Saturday at 8:15 on ESPN. Watch ESPN and the ESPN app. Coming off a game where that high-powered offense put up just 43, granted on the road against a very good defensive team in Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina's got to start pulling it together. They got to learn how to play different speeds.
Renee Copain watching her son at the free throw line. She has attended 121 of Troy's 131 career games. She lives in Virginia, where Copain is from, Midlothian, out of Cosby High School.
Mother's love, mother's love.
We've got some good stories about Renee, no doubt. We've got some good stories about Renee that Troy told us earlier today. She is the driving force behind his love of basketball and a lot of motivation for him. His dad, Troy Sr., is in town as well. He's a police officer up in New York as 3 is knocked down by Robinson. Ends a 9-1 Cincinnati run. That was a big shot for Robinson. Clark backing down against Knowles. Collie came over for help and did a nice job of it.
Well, part of the problem was Kyle Washington brought his man over to provide some help. And here, even during practice, you see Houston just work on that. A little bit of penetration, mini penetration, draws the defense in and kicks it out. And as we said, 9 3-pointers per game. That's what Houston thrives upon.
Jaron Cumberland, the freshman, a smooth-looking jump shot. He's been inconsistent at times this year, but coming off an 11-point and 5-assist game on Sunday at UCF. The 5 assists were a career high for the freshman. Gray and Robinson working together in the backcourt. Dotson can really shoot it as well. Very good shooting team that can score in multiple ways. And Galen Robinson has already shown it off tonight. He's got 8 of the Houston 11.
Outstanding job by Houston all together, not just Robinson. Keeping the floor spread, keeping the help far enough away that Robinson can gain that advantage getting into the paint.
Copain into Robinson with the left hand, and there's the first field goal for the senior.
Talk about Troy Copain not scoring the way he had in the past over the last couple of years, but he is Mr. Clutch for this team. When they need a basket, he takes it upon himself, and more times than not, it's successful.
Copain on the switch has to guard the taller Knowles, who drives into Cumberland and flips it in. Danrad Knowles, chicken as he's known, puts in 2.
But look at Troy Copain trying to guard Knowles, who's at 6'10". Very slender 6'10", but the help coming over is what created a foul. Darren Cumberland got there a little too late.
Danrad, a veteran of 124 games. He'll celebrate Senior Day on Sunday when Houston faces off against East Carolina to close out their regular season. They're going to have a similar ceremony like the Bearcats had tonight. They're shutting down this current edition of Fifth Third Arena. Hofheinz Pavilion is going to close down, get gutted on the interior, and it's going to open up as the Fertitta Center for the 18-19 season. $60 million facility. Copain misses the 3, and out of bounds the other way.
For Mr. Fertitta, that's chump change.
Oh, when you got Fertitta, money, you're doing something right. When we come back, name that team. We're going to have a little bit of fun with what's going on for the upcoming postseason. Don't go away. This is all the way to Selection Sunday Champ Week on the ESPN networks. Cincinnati's pretty much a lock for the NCAA tournament. Houston is trying to build up its resumes. We welcome you courtside. Adam Amin, Len Elmore. Feel like having some game show style fun right now, a little blind resume action. You want to dive into this a little?
So who are you, Bob Barker or Wink Martindale? I mean,
spade or new to your pets, everybody. So we have a couple of teams that have, almost identical resumes. One of them is currently into the field. One of them is currently out of the field. But try to distinguish these two right now.
Well, I'm not. The one on the left looks like Houston. And that's, obviously because I have their notes.
So we're aware that the RPI is 53.
I'm kind of curious as to why. I mean, an RPI top 50 record, Cal being in the last four in, I think in some ways it's still too much respect for one conference, not enough for the other.
And this is what I wanted to talk to you about especially, and we didn't talk about this earlier because I wanted to keep this as a fresh idea in your head. As Johnson picks up a steal out on the perimeter, and he'll put in two to put Cincinnati up by 3. There does seem to be a tendency, and this seems to be an argument, especially the last couple of years, a high-powered, again, let's call it mid-major team for lack of a better term, against a middle-tier, high-major team out of one of the power conferences. The leaning seems to be towards the power conference teams.
Yeah, and again, a lot of it has to do with competition in my mind, despite the fact that when you look at the objective numbers against RPI top 50 teams, if you're going to use that as criteria, there's not much difference between these two at all. But, I would also say there's probably a little bit of bias. Last year, the American teams didn't fare that well. And, that kind of residual memory, rightly or wrongly, might still be in the minds of some of the tournament selection committee people.
Propane to Cumberland, knocks down the 3 from the corner. And Kevin Johnson, the senior on this Cincinnati team, one of the 3, after they lost to UCF the other day, he actually mentioned it, that, hey, this might actually hurt our seeding a little bit because I think there's a bias against our conference. Even though UCF is a 19-win team this year, they're sitting as a potential top 5 seed in the American tournament. They've got a great coach in Johnny Dawkins. They've got a budding star, at least by name recognition, in Taco Fall.
Outstanding defense.
Excellent defensive team, and they don't get the respect that maybe even some of the teams in their conference feel they deserve.
No, I'm in agreement. Again, though, it still takes basketball people to make the final determination. And again, based upon their understanding of how this game is played and, competitive comparisons as opposed to mere numbers. As I've said, if you're going to go by mere numbers, then just hire a bunch of mathematicians, analytics folks, figure it out, put together a couple of, logarithms, and you'll get your teams. But that's no fun.
Of course not. We like what we see on the floor, too. It's got to be a blend. It has to be a blend of the numbers, the metrics, what you see on tape, and the personnel as well. Remember, Houston was missing Devin Davis for a good chunk of this season due to multiple injuries. Since Davis has been back, this team has been much better. And as Lenny mentioned, Houston has won 7 of its last 8. And they've got one of the dynamic scorers in the country in Rob Gray. Dotson's a pretty good one, too, but Cumberland with the strip for the 5th Houston turnover. Justin Jennifer, pull-up pop, and Dotson's there for the rebound.
That turnover doesn't hurt, but once again, 5 turnovers. They only average 9.8 per game.
Dotson missed the 3. Colley missed it off the side of the backboard. Didn't realize where he was after the offensive rebound. Cumberland gliding in for 2.
Big fella gliding, and when I say big, I'm not talking necessarily height, but the girth. Jaron Cumberland just willed his way to the basket, and that's part of that offense we talked about. More high-powered, high-octane points off turnovers. They get in transition. Cincinnati's got the athletes, the size, and they can put it in the basket.
Dotson called for the push-out by Tony Green. Will go the other way off the 6th Cougar turnover. The first time these two teams met, Cincinnati exploited Houston's 9 turnovers, relatively low number obviously, but into 12 points in what ended up being a 9-point victory on the road at Hawkeyes.
Right now, they're only 5 away from that number here in the first half.
Cumberland to Johnson, freshman to senior. And the freshman Cumberland came in for the offensive rebound, but Ron Gruber called a foul. No, it was Ray Natilli who called the foul first against Bertrand Colley of Houston.
Dan Red Nose back in the ball game, and recognizing, you know, Colley just not strong enough, not capable enough to keep people off the board. Not to say that Knowles is either. I mean, his nickname Chicken might not necessarily be a physical description, but he is rather slender. But they've got to be able to block out, keep Cincinnati off that glass.
Washington with a great save. An offensive rebound for one of the better offensive rebounding teams in the league. Another chance. This time Washington gets blocked underneath the rim, and coming out of the pack is Robinson. He sets up Wes Van Beck for 3. And Washington will run it down and rescue it to Cumberland.
And now too quick a shot. You know, down 6 points. Obviously, you got an opportunity, but wait until you get your runners to come and command that board. There's all red shirts on that glass, no white shirts at all.
So it is Knowles and Davis doubling on Washington, and a foul is called. It'll go against Cincinnati, which currently has its largest lead at 6.
And we talk about the freshman, Jaron Cumberland. Pushes the ball, maneuvers through, and uses that big body for 2.
Part of our Sonic Blockbuster, Duke and North Carolina on ESPN, 78th meeting all time. When we talk about rivalries, Lenny, you ranked yours in various sports, and Duke Carolina was right up there amongst the greatest.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've watched it since I was a kid. And they used to have the ACC game of the week up in New York City. And one of the reasons why I wanted to play in the ACC, not necessarily for those two teams, a little far south for the kids back in 1970. Yep. But, I mean, the quality basketball, Hall of Fame coaches throughout the years, and, you know, obviously highly competitive for the most part.
Good second chance opportunity for Devin Davis. Junior college transfer from Indianapolis, who's playing his 8th game since returning from an injury.
And plus being a Maryland alum, I like to see those two beat their brains out.
Obviously, if you watch any of our coverage at home, you go, man, they sure do like to promote other games. Well, yeah, that's part of our jobs as broadcasters, is to promote our network and the games that we have. What do you want me to say about Duke, North Carolina to get you to watch, other than it's Duke, North Carolina? What do I have to do? Not much, as Johnson hits his second field goal. Dotson for 3. Way off target that time, and some of the threes have not looked as sharp for Houston in the early going.
Well, they're having a lot of problems from beyond the arc, just 2 of 8. And sometimes they're pulling up, they're getting open looks, but the confidence is going, it's ebbing, as they're not hitting shots and not getting the offensive rebounds.
That was a big problem the first time around in Houston. The Bearcats went just 3 of 19 from three-point range in that game. Cincinnati hit 10 threes in that game. Nasir Brooks comes out. He's working as the 5-man now for Cincinnati. Shot clock down to 2, and Cumberland, the freshman, will have to hoist one up. Poor offensive possession for Cincinnati.
Well, you take a look out there on the floor as Justin Jennifer comes in the ball game. For a period of time, there was no real point guard out there to be able to lead that offense.
They're leaning on Johnson to try to handle it, as well as the freshman Cumberland. Scott with the pick. Another turnover for Houston. They've got 7. That one nearly turned over, but rescued by Quadri Moore, who did not play on Sunday against UCF. And Cumberland trying the entry feed, well read by Van Beck to knock it out of bounds. And right on cue, Lenny, as soon as you make the point about point guard, here he comes. Troy Copain will re-enter the game, trying to get Cincinnati back on track.
Yeah, now Justin Jennifer is he's a quality backup. You know, he's had 9 assists in the last 4 games prior to this one, only playing 11 minutes a game. But I think Mick Cronin recognizes that, you know, with a 6-point lead and as explosive as Houston is, you know, just a couple of breaths for Troy Copain is plenty.
Quadri Moore, again, did not play on Sunday, comes right back in and knocks down a jumper to give Cincinnati its largest lead at 8.
Yeah, Quadri Moore gets, kind of teaspoons full of minutes, averaging about a little less than 5 minutes per game over the last 6 games, but he can come up knocking down threes from time to time.
Dotson, good move, but no finish there for Houston. And here comes Cincinnati again. And the best offense that Mick Cronin has had, leading the American at 75 a game. And a big reason why is Kevin Johnson's emergence as a three-point shooter puts Cincinnati up by 11. Back in 30 seconds. And this is the final game for Fifth Third Arena in this current iteration. It's a little strange. We walked into shoot-around earlier today. Those 3 banners are up there, but all the other banners with the jerseys and everything like that have been taken out, so it feels a little barren, but they're getting ready to go. Expected to be ready for the 2018-19 season. Renovated Fifth Third Arena, $87 million, beg your pardon, privately funded renovations. They've won 82% of their games in the 28 years at this current edition of Fifth Third Arena. Bob Huggins' first year as the head coach of Cincinnati was the first year of this arena. They've had a ton of sellouts. They've had incredible moments here. Some high-quality players, legendary Bearcats have played on this floor and in this arena, but they are very excited to have the renovations. They're going to play over at Northern Kentucky for a season and then come back here.
That was just a sweet smell of success over the years, particularly when you can get private funding. That means the alumni have bought into this program.
Yep.
And that's a wonderful sign, particularly again that it's private funding.
Got a great NBA Friday doubleheader coming up for you as well tomorrow. And what a game last night. Boston and Cleveland at TD Garden. LeBron had a triple-double, but Isaiah Thomas and the Celtics came out with a win. Now Cleveland heads to Atlanta to take on the Hawks. And then a 1-3 start for the Pelicans with Fire and Ice, as they're being called. Anthony Davis and Boogie Cousins. They'll host Kawhi Leonard and the Spurs. That's our NBA Friday doubleheader tomorrow night. Of course, today is the 55-year anniversary of Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game over in Hershey, Pennsylvania, when the Philadelphia Warriors knocked off the New York Knicks.
And you can bet he wasn't hanging around at half court cherry-picking either. No, that's caused a lot of changes in the game. They widened that lane. They did a lot of things to try to level the playing field, but it's just an unbelievable accomplishment on the highest level of basketball.
And we were discussing the success of this arena and how good it's been to Cincinnati. They have the second longest home court win streak in the country. Oregon's home schedule is done, and this will be the final game for Cincinnati. So they have a chance to go into next year with their Fifth Third Arena win streak intact for at least another 2 years. And they have never lost against Houston. 14-0 all-time in this building against the Cougars. Here comes Cincinnati with an 11-point lead.
Nice block from behind by Evans to start this break.
Trey Scott off target. Here comes Robinson, always with his head up, looking to push the tempo. Davis had it blocked by Evans from behind, and out of bounds, last touch by Houston.
Jacob Evans getting sneaky now, 2 blocks from behind. With just good timing. Take a look at Evans right there, allows the ball handler to go past him and waits for his help to stop him, and then he goes up and gets the deflection.
Solid on the defensive end all year has been Cincinnati, really one of the best in the country. Top 10 of the country in blocks, top 10 of the country in scoring defense, top 10 of the country in defensive efficiency. Quadri Moore thought about it, took it, missed it long. Evans tips it alive for Johnson. Inside of 4 to play first half.
The 2-3 zone that Cincinnati persists in playing has really created problems for the most part. When Houston can spread the floor, they get opportunities. When they rush, they have problems.
Devin Davis gets called for the offensive foul. Hey, Adnan, how do you feel about being back in the studio after being out at the Oscars? Are you slumming it right now with us?
ESPN's exclusive presentation of college basketball is brought to you by McDonald's. I'm loving it.
Rocky offensive first half for a typically explosive Houston Cougar team. They are 1 for their last 11 after a 6 of 9 start. And these are 2 of the top 4 scorers in the American Conference. Dotson averages 18, Gray averages 20. And so far they've combined for just 3.
Yeah, the zone has taken away the good open looks for Houston, and the fact that Cincinnati has only got 3 turnovers hasn't allowed Houston to get out in transition, which is what they love. I mean, I like the way that Cincinnati zone matches up and they recognize where the shooters are. Hence, you've seen some forced shots by both Gray and Dotson, kind of frustration shots.
Evans, Clark, Moore, Cumberland, and Copain, the 5 for the Bearcats, and Evans was the only man to touch it on that possession for Cincinnati. Robinson, Davis, Colley, Gray, and Dotson, the 5 out there for the Cougars. Let's see if Gray gets going. Davis skying for the rebound and flaring it back out towards midcourt. But off target and over to Cincinnati.
That was a perfect example of kind of frustration shots. One pass into the offense. Rob Gray wants to take a challenge 3 instead of getting some ball movement. And that's playing right into Cincinnati's hands.
Cougars have more turnovers than they do field goals. 9 giveaways to 7 buckets. Stays at this end of the floor.
Audrey Moore trying to get a little too fancy right there with the hook pass on the drive.
Around, yeah.
But I'll tell you what, though. You get a guy coming off the bench, as I said, and has only played 5 minutes a game over the last 6 games. He's still come off the bench with some confidence. If you're Mick Cronin, you got to look beyond the mistakes and like the fact that he's out there trying to make something happen.
Yep. Clark posting up, banging his way inside and still muscling it in against the double team of Bertrand Colley.
Boy, Gary Clark just doesn't get enough credit.
Nope.
17 double-doubles in his whole career. Last 3 games. Well, actually, in the last game, just 3 points against Central Florida. But beyond that, 13 points, 10 rebounds in the 3 games prior to that. And you can see he's just a force inside.
Dotson off the curl. He can be very effective off the dribble, much like Rob Gray.
And if Houston would recognize, and when they get that mini penetration, that contracts that zone, and now the shooters can circle in and get good looks. They were doing that early in the game and kind of forgot all about it.
Dotson's coming off his 3rd 30-point game of the year. Those were his first 2 points of the night. Offensive rebound for Moore. Clark cutting for 2.
Give all the credit to Quadri Moore on that one. Another second chance opportunity for Cincinnati. That's their 11th point off of 9, or actually now 10 Houston turnovers.
Gray with the fading shot over Copain.
That's another force, Adam, that once again Rob Gray is in frustration mode. Got to let the game come to you, play with your teammates instead of trying to force the action, particularly against a high-caliber defensive team like Cincinnati.
Quadri Moore trying a 3. Clark is right there. And Kelvin Sampson is looking down his bench, trying to find somebody who wants to grab a rebound right now at the defensive end. Robinson misses the 3. Cumberland snares the rebound. 3 on 3, and Cumberland with the offensive foul. Good job by Robinson to step in and take the charge.
A lot of heart by Robinson stepping into that freight train. Whew. Coming right at you. A good call. Cumberland tried to get around him. Robinson might have tipped just a little bit to the left, but nevertheless, good call by the official.
Cumberland's got about 30 pounds. on Galen Robinson.
And he hit him full flush, too.
It looked like an American Conference football game back in October. Dotson. Got Johnson on him. Now Copain on the switch. Oh, he's trying so hard to get a decent paint touch. Copain started the outlet for Johnson. Slammed home by Evans. Timeout, Kelvin Sampson.
The best athlete on the Bearcats and possibly on the floor right now. And Jacob Evans still hustling, getting his job done. Here's the push. The miss, but watch Evans never gives up on it. Boom. That's just pretty basketball right there.
Two of those seniors teaming up on that play, and there was the sophomore that flushed it down to put Cincinnati into a 20-4 run, going up by 17, their largest lead of this first 20-minute session. Jacob Evans out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, had a chance to go to LSU, but really there was no room for him. There was a really good recruiting class that had come in front of him that season. He was the #3 player in the state, so he ends up coming to Cincinnati and becoming one of their top scorers.
He probably wouldn't have liked the gumbo as much as he liked the chili up here.
A chili over gumbo, yeah. Off target for Morris Dunnigan coming in off the bench. Houston looking for something. 2.1 to go, and Mick Cronin has that use it or lose it timeout to try to set something up for the final 2 seconds. It is senior night at Fifth Third Arena. Kevin Johnson, one of those 3 seniors honored tonight. He's off to a good start at both ends.
And that's what he's known for, an outstanding athlete, excellent anticipation on the defensive end, and the offense that he gives Cincinnati is just an added bonus. You know, the way he's built with his length, his quickness, and his basketball savvy, he's been an integral part of that outstanding Cincinnati defense.
Kevin Johnson is the Cincinnati native on this roster. He's from Westwood, which is about 5 minutes away from Calhoun Drive, south end of the Cincinnati campus.
Mom just saw her face up on the Jumbotron up there.
Catrice and Kevin Sr. both in attendance tonight. Part of the senior night festivities. Clark will inbound with 2.1. Will heave it off the hands of Brooks. And that'll take us to the end of the first half. Houston averages the 4th fewest turnovers per game in the country. Michigan, Virginia, Notre Dame, the only 3 teams with fewer turnovers at 9.8. They averaged 9.8. They had 10 in that first half. And it all leads to a 17-point Cincinnati lead at halftime. Adnan, Kara, Jeff in the studio after these messages for the halftime report. American Conference on ESPN, a 17-point Cincinnati lead. They closed the first half on a 20-4 run, and coming off one of their worst offensive games of the year, actually performing very well on the offensive end. Adam Amin, Len Elmore on hand, but part of that offense has come from Cincinnati's defense. It's part of our power performance brought to us by Kohler.
Well, Cincinnati's been outstanding on the defensive end with anticipation, utilizing their length against a team that averages less than 10 turnovers per game. Cincinnati's done a terrific job of turning them over 10 times in the first half. And from those 10 turnovers, they've gotten 13 points. And it's been pretty much, like I said, anticipation, and then after you force a few, then it becomes self-inflicted. The transition has been excellent. You see the athlete, Kevin Johnson, and then Jacob Evans finishing it.
Everything in favor, just about, of Cincinnati. Obviously, neither team shot all that well from the outside, but that's been a problem for Houston. Remember, they're the top 3-point shooting team in this league. They average 8.5 3-pointers per game. Only Temple averages more, and they shot just 2 of 11 in the last 3.5 games, just a shade over 30%.
And remember, Houston thrives on their points off turnovers, average 16 on the season. They've only got 2 in this particular game. And the thing about Houston, is they've got no steals, which means Cincinnati has not committed live ball turnovers, which is what Houston thrives on usually.
However, Houston, their last 2 games, a 5-point win over UConn and a 1-point win at Memphis. Long runs in both of those games, including a 25-6 run against UConn to start the second half. So they can come out of the gates very hot.
Yeah, the one thing Cincinnati has to be cognizant of, as they were in the first half, where are the shooters in that zone?
Yep.
And force them to shoot challenge threes. As I said, Houston makes 9 per game, and only 2 of 11. And the averages tell you at 40%, something's got to give.
16 on the shot clock for Troy Copain and his Bearcats. Playing in his 131st career game. In and out for Washington, and ball goes to the Cougars.
Well, you see so many of Kyle Washington's shots just go down, almost in, and then pop right back out. And as I said before, I just think it's a lot of backspin. He's got those long fingers, and oftentimes he puts too much backspin on the ball, and it just doesn't want to stay down.
You see that on his free throws a lot as well. Robinson, a depth and skilled point guard, finds Damian Dotson. Can he get things going as well? He and Gray, just 5 points combined in the first half.
Yeah, and that was a good start, recognizing Cincinnati is challenging the threes. It's time for some, as I said in the first half, mini penetration, and then find the open shooters with ball movement.
Clark spinning and flipping home 2 more. He's got 9 points tonight.
But you can't trade baskets. You got to make a move right here if you're Houston.
Robinson off target. That one went towards us and over my not very tall head. Here are the top 4 in the standings, and SMU has split with Cincinnati this year, but a win tonight against Tulsa will lock up the #1 seed for SMU. That game is just about getting underway now. And then, of course, Houston with a win tonight, if they can come back, would lock up the 3 seed. UCF is playing, or finished up playing, in about an hour against USF. That's over on ESPNU. And the Knights could end up as a top 4 team as well.
Excellent interior passing right there. Yep. Kyle Washington throwing over the defense. But going back to SMU locking up the regular season championship, when Nick Moore left, Jordan Tolbert, some of the other seniors, people wondered, okay, where's this scoring going to come from? Yep. You know, you knew Shake Milton was an up-and-comer. Ben Moore is one of those guys that's a glue guy, but no one ever expected Shemi Ojale to be what he is. And I tell you what, you know, that team plus this team in the red right here, Cincinnati, I expect them to get past that first weekend, no question about it.
And that has been an issue, obviously, for Cincinnati. And granted, they've had some very tight games in the NCAA tournament. They've gone to 6 straight NCAAs, as Copain will pick up an offensive foul. That upsets Mick Cronin on the call. Only one time in that 6-year stretch have they gotten out of the first weekend.
Well, that's Troy Copain's second personal. Good idea by Mick to take him out right now while he's got this 17-point lead. Yep. You know, let's face it, the sophomore Robinson just outsmarted Troy Copain.
Kind of baited him into putting a body into the chest. Robinson flipping one up.
I was just getting ready to give the old school swinging fence hook some credit.
I was thinking I was going to say on the 55th anniversary of Wilt's 100, where he put home a lot of those hooks. Thought that was kind of apropos for this particular night.
Hooks and finger rolls as well as dunks. Dipper, that's why they call him the Dipper, because it was finger rolled down.
Clark backing in. Cincinnati has 24 paint points in this game. Houston has 24 points total in this game, and a lot of that damage inside has been done by Gary Clark.
Remember, we said earlier, it started with Kyle Washington, but overall the advantage inside, the strength advantage, the know-how in the paint resides in Cincinnati, and they really haven't taken too many bad shots in this game, and they've had their focus on getting the ball inside, and as you just mentioned, the results are there.
Clark has 11 of Cincinnati's last 13 points. Last year we were talking about some of the bracketology with Houston maybe trying to play their way into the conversation, obviously down by 18 now. Cincinnati and SMU in Joe Lunardi's latest bracketology were both sitting as 5 seeds. American got 4 teams last year. With what's happening in Houston tonight, barring a nice run in the American tournament, which is certainly something they're capable of, it just feels like it's going to be 2 or 3 at most out of the AAC. Evans misses a 3, gets it right back.
Yeah, look, this game, we talked about eye test. This game doesn't look good for Houston. They're not even competitive overall. They have their spurts and times, but you're down 19.
Well, just when we say that, Kyle Meyer was out there competing because he's got a bloody, I guess just to the right of the, I don't want to call it a bloody eye, but a bloody forehead or bloody eyebrow. So he's got to go to the bench and get tended to by the Houston training staff.
We give Meyer credit for sticking his head, nose, whatever in there, trying to compete. You take a look at the residual on the floor that has to be mopped up.
Meyer is a senior, 6'10", junior college transfer who started his career at Iowa, played a dozen games before going to junior college, and now in his second and final year at Houston. Well, while we have a moment, we remind you, again, I don't think I have to sell it too much to you at this point, but Carolina is gunning for the ACC regular season championship outright. Duke is looking for the season sweep. The scene shifts to Chapel Hill Saturday at 8:15 Eastern on ESPN. Saturday primetime presented by AT&T, part of our Sonic blockbuster.
And last time those two teams played, the 86-78 win by Duke, their young players grew up in that particular game, and sometimes it takes a game to do that. And by the same token, Carolina has to recognize that they have to play at different speeds.
Yep.
You get a lead, you still can't go breakneck up and down the floor. You start missing some shots. Ultimately you let guys back in the ball game.
Grayson Allen had a big game. Luke Kennard had a big game. Tatum had a big game. As you see Meyer getting the arm of Devin Davis right into that right eyebrow.
And that's why you always teach bigs, when you're not underneath the basket, you got to have your hands up, elbows at least shoulder high, just to protect yourself against those errant elbows, be it by the opposition or your own team. You got your hands at your side, you're asking to get popped.
Meyer, who made his 6th consecutive start tonight, had a really good game against UConn a couple of contests ago. Career high in points and rebounds in that game. Still being tended to. It'll be Robinson, Davis, Gray, Colley, and Dotson, the 5 out there now for Houston.
And take a look at the top of your screen right there. Kevin Johnson doesn't even step back and play defense. He is hanging on Rob Gray. And I think that's a lesson to be learned from when Cincinnati played Trayvon Blewett and Xavier, and Blewett busted out for 40 points. And a lot of times guys were so involved in playing team defense, they forgot where the shooter was until it was too late. Lesson learned.
Clark traveled with the basketball. And that'll take us to the under 16 of the second half. Cincinnati in good shape right now, trying to extend that home court win streak on the final night at Fifth Third in its current form. Cincinnati up by 19 in what is their 30th game this season. And they've only suffered 4 losses all year. The latest, though, came on Sunday on the road in what was a rock fight of an offensive game. And Trey Scott, in a 2-point game, misses an alley-oop dunk with 4 seconds to go. And UCF, behind B.J. Taylor's season-high 27 points, picks up their first ever ranked win over a ranked team at home at CFE Arena. And believe it or not, that is the Bearcats' worst loss of the year to a team that's in the top 100 and frankly in the top 80 in the RPI. And it came on the road. And by the way, UCF's got 19 wins this year. So that's their resume right now.
More importantly, UCF is #1 in the nation in field goal percentage defense, #5 in scoring defense, and in the top 25 in 3-point field goal percentage defense. So I'm not so sure that's such a disgrace if they're calling that a worse loss.
Yeah, and again, that's strictly strictly off of RPI. That's a pretty good resume right now. The only other 3 teams that have beaten Cincinnati this year, Rhode Island in Connecticut, which is essentially a home game for Rhode Island. A game they led by 8 at halftime. They lost on the road at Butler, and they lost at SMU by 9 points. And then the UCF loss. That's it. Those are the 4 losses all year for Cincinnati. Those 4 teams, by the way, have a combined record of 87 and 29. So this is really one of the stronger resumes in college basketball. Eye test would tell you they can put up points this year. And obviously they've defended pretty much ever since Mick Cronin's been the head coach. So where can they go? How far can they go? Where does their talent have the ability to take it?
Well, in my mind, again, the Bearcats as well as SMU Mustangs, I think they get back past the first two games.
Okay.
First weekend. I mean, they just have to, considering, some of the matchups. If they're not seeded 8th or 9th, which I doubt either one of them would be, where they would have to play the number 1 seed immediately after winning, I think they've got the ability to do some damage and at least get to the second weekend.
And Cincinnati's only gone once in the last 6 years where they've made each NCAA tournament. That was in 2012.
Yeah, last year was heartbreaking. They had an opportunity to win that game, and unfortunately, Octavius Ellis couldn't put down the dunk in time against St. Joe's.
Evans puts down the 3 here to put Cincinnati up by 21. And Houston, obviously, tonight they were looking for a signature win. They can still certainly make a run in the American Conference Tournament. They have that ability at both ends of the floor as well. But they have only gone to the NCAA tournament 1 time in the last quarter of a century, and that was 2010 when Tom Penders was the head coach.
We just had an opportunity on defense to look at Cincinnati covering on the passing lanes as well as the driving lanes. Supreme help. Houston just totally stymied, can't get an open look.
So Copain on the other end knocks down their 3. He's got his first field goal. Renee's pumped.
And when they do have a chance for an open look, they miss the guys. There's Rob Gray wide open in the paint, and as well as when he kind of drifted out to the corner, Cincinnati recovered pretty well.
Yep. Clark guarding Gray on this drive. A late block from Washington, but there is a foul call. Third foul on Washington. This is the last 6 years. They've made the NCAA tournament each of the last 6 years. Only 8 teams in the country have done that. But only 1 time, that was the 2012 season where they got out of the first weekend. The 2011 season where they call it the 3rd round, that was still the first weekend. That was when the nomenclature was as such, where most of us were confused by it, and I'm glad the NCAA tournament has adjusted that. You saw number 11 check in now for Houston. That is Kyle Meyer, who typically wears 33, but the bloody jersey will be done for the evening.
Yeah, it won't be, as you take a look at the score, probably not analogous to the bloody socks.
No. I knew there was a Red Sox-Yankees reference in there somewhere waiting for me. Spring training going on right now. You feeling good about Greg Bird, I would imagine, at this point?
He's there. Taking over first base. Pitching, though, that's the wild card.
Closing in on opening night, the same night as opening day, the same night as the national championship game in college basketball. Gray to Van Beck, good cover up by Quadri Moore. Meyer right back in the thick of things. Cincinnati with a 23-point lead, and Quadri Moore is limping around, and frustratedly may have to go to the bench. He'll be checked out by the fine trainer of Cincinnati, Rob Williams.
Take him in the locker room. It looked like he was reaching for his ankle, and doctors following.
Clark with 5 on the shot clock, backing down Meyer. Using the slick moves to get a decent look. Tipped off the rim and snared by Houston. Out of the pack comes Dotson. Good cut by Meyer to the rim, but he is deterred. He wanted the foul. Instead, it's Bearcats ball, and Kelvin Sampson just looks frustrated. Copain to the rim.
Wanted a foul, a goaltending, something.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at Kelvin Sampson's face. That is an incredulous look as he continues to talk to Tony Green. And he wants a timeout. Largest lead at 25 for Cincinnati. And on senior night, Troy Copain in his 131st game, 96 start. Senior class that has won 97 games. Troy Sr. is here, and Renee, loud as always, cheering on baby boy. An incredible night on Sunday when ESPN won its first ever Academy Award, and what a piece of work that Ezra Edelman and his team put together. OJ Made in America was absolutely phenomenal. If you haven't had a chance to see it, you will see part 4 of 5, 11 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN2. I'm sure there's some kind of Johnny Cochran joke in here somewhere about defense in Cincinnati, which is top 7 in the country in points allowed, and so far tonight against a Houston offense that came in averaging right around 74 a game, holding them to 26 in the first 28 and a half minutes.
And capitalizing so much off of that defense, 19 points off turnovers.
Yep.
They've done a terrific job, and plus 14 on the glass, make it 15.
Cincinnati consistently playing this way at home.
Going back to OJ Made in America. It wasn't just chronicling the investigation and the trial. It was about chronicling the life and times at that particular moment. Something we can all learn from. The divisions, we wonder if they've ever been healed, and if there's even residual to this day.
I would say there's somewhat of a parallel between about 20 some odd years ago and what's going on today. I think a lot of people my age didn't realize what kind of star OJ was. I did not realize how massive. I mean, he would walk into a room and the whole place would shut down. That's what type of presence he had. I knew him as he's a really good football player back in the day, and he's been in some movies, but I didn't understand the gravity of the situation because I didn't understand how big of a star OJ had been over the course of his life.
Just remember, he existed in celebrity-driven Hollywood, and that's essentially where that legend was made. But nevertheless, as I said, to look at the Reginald Denny situation, look at some of the other stuff, and people start to recognize, again, the divisions that we have socially. Yep. Hopefully we learn from it.
It is a fascinating look into the times going all the way back to the middle of the century and into the early 90s. And a very comprehensive and entertaining and oftentimes sad look.
Taught history lesson.
Yeah, very much so. Phenomenal job. Please take a look at it. Academy Award-winning documentary.
And when I say taught, I say T-A-U-T.
Yes.
Instead of T-A-U-T-A-G.
And back for 3. Houston has only made 4 buckets in the last 21 minutes of this game. Bearcats nearly doubling up in points. They're doubling Houston up in rebounds. 9 to play.
For a team that averages 75 points a game to be held to 26, and this is not a slow-paced game.
No. Gary Clark with a couple of free throws on the other side. 8:57 to play. Will step aside in the Queen City. Good defensive team that only needs 6 or 7 guys to make things happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that short bench will actually work to their advantage during the tournament. But the only problem with being a 5 seed You got to play at 12.
Yep, and those are traditionally, and Lenny, you've called a ton of NCAA tournaments. You have always,
a few of those.
You have seen traditionally the 5-12 and maybe the 4-13. Maybe to a little bit of a lesser extent. Those are always the games where everybody's like, I think there might be an upset brewing here, and oftentimes that's where it happens.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is psychological too, because the 5 seed would clearly be better overall than the 12. I mean, there's no argument there, but self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will.
Late in the clock, Copain hits the deck and a Dotson foul.
Well, 26-point lead. I think that it's only a few more minutes before Mick Cronin recognizes this is not the kind of game you want to get your guys hurt in.
Yeah, exactly.
You never want to get them hurt, but certainly, you couldn't forgive yourself if that happened. But as long as you're playing hard, the odds of that happening are slim.
You mentioned Copain's scoring has been down this year, almost by design. His rebounding and assist-to-turnover ratio has been excellent from his guard position. Washington lumbering inside. Cleared by Gray.
Well, Mick Cronin will tell us that his scoring, particularly on this team, is not the primary goal.
Exactly. Yeah.
His scoring is to create for others. I mean, his primary goal is to create for others. And then down the stretch, when you need a bucket, that's when his offensive skills come to the fore.
Only Monte Morris of Iowa State, P.J. Thompson of the Big Ten champion Purdue Boilermakers, and Eric Garcia of Wofford, who's played in an NCAA tournament. Those are the only 3 guys in the country with a better assist-to-turnover ratio than Troy Copain.
When you look at the top of your screen, Mick Cronin orchestrating this offense. So the note.
7:20 to play, and here comes Houston. A shocking performance by their standards offensively, although a lot of that has to do with the excellent defense of Cincinnati. Rob Gray, the leading scorer in the American Conference. We'll head to the free throw line. 7:06 to play, and it is all Bearcats. Senior night for the cheer squad as well, as they're celebrated at Fifth Third Arena tonight. And Troy Copain celebrating senior night, his final home game. And so far, a balanced night, which has often been the case for Troy Copain.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been doing this conference. This is the 4th year. I remember when Copain came in as a freshman, you saw the skill level, but it was the understanding, the learning curve that he scaled tremendously. And to understand what he needed to be each year, he had to be something different for this team. But right now, that's the consummate point guard play is what this team needs, and the leadership. And boy, he's done a terrific job in providing all that.
Michelle Renee has attended 121 of 131 games in Troy's career. And I got a chance to ask Troy earlier today about his mom, and there have been stories written about Renee before, but Troy, during breaks, will often, from one end of the floor as he's walking back towards the Cincinnati bench, will immediately look into section 114 to the same seat that his mom sits in every single game that she attends. And Renee has hand signals that she will give Troy in the game that represent different things that she feels he needs to do. And he's gotten so used to looking towards Renee, who is vocal, is expressive, it is very encouraging, and somebody who's a driving force behind Troy and a lot of his success. He often looks to her for some kind of internal advice in their own special way. And
well, whatever it is, it's
incredible.
Worked, because I'm sure Mick Cronin doesn't have any quibble with it, as long as he pays attention when he sits down.
Of course, yeah. I wonder how many times Mick's advice has been identical to Renee's advice. I can't imagine that it's too different more often than
I can tell you the advice that he's given the team now as we take a look at Renee Copain. He's saying you can't take your foot off the pedal. I mean, come on, fellas. You know, this is about getting better right now. We should be even better in executing. Take a look at the all-time assists.
He passed Oscar Robertson earlier this season. He's 3 away from 500. Copain tonight with 5 assists to 2 turnovers. It was a very rare off night for him against UCF. Part of the reason Cincinnati struggled. He had 4 assists and 4 turnovers. Those 4 turnovers in one game were almost as many as he had had the previous 10 games. That's how good he had been during a stretch between January and February.
And I think it's fortunate enough for the Bearcats that they haven't suffered those letdowns more frequently, because that's essentially what that was. They couldn't find any offense, not to take anything away from the outstanding defense of Central Florida.
Right.
But, you know, they couldn't generate anything and still had a chance to tie the game and go into overtime.
Mick Cronin said just that. It was a bad offensive night. We've had more of those in previous seasons and less of those this year with a very, very good offense.
Great minds think alike.
Exactly. Well, feels like you've seen this happen before, my friend. A top finish by Devin Davis. Come on, that reverse. That was impressive. The Indianapolis native and former Indiana Hoosier.
Mick Cronin looking for some ball movement as well as body movement. As you know, he doesn't want his guys to have one eye on the clock.
Yeah.
And try to play this basketball game. They're going to be fully invested to finish this last 5:15 or so.
Cumberland leaning in, wave out the basket. Offensive foul, says Tony Green.
Well, we saw Galen Robinson step in and take a charge and not be too much worse for the wear. But on that one, Devin Davis paid mightily as we talk about the big body of Jaron Cumberland. Picture's worth at least a few hundred.
Yeah, approaching 5 to play. Houston still has one more game left at home against East Carolina. Cincinnati's final game will be on the road at Connecticut. That'll be on Sunday for both of these teams. And then Lenny and I and Tim Welsh and Alan Beswick and Dave O'Brien and Doris Burke and Andy Katz will all get a chance to go down with our fantastic production crews over to the XL Center in Hartford, and we get to bring you, I think, what will be a very competitive American Conference tournament. Certainly Cincinnati and SMU are the favorites, and understandably so. But tell me the difference between, say, 3 to 8 in this league. And I think that's been a tendency in a lot of leagues this year. The middle of the pack of a lot of conferences are uber competitive, and they have been all season long.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at this Houston team. We're going to talk a little bit about Memphis. Certainly UConn being at home.
Yep.
I mean, you can't discount that. And even on the first night, the Tulsas and the Temples, they have the ability, as I talked about Memphis as well, Tulsa and Temple also have the ability to do some damage.
South Florida, which by the way has one conference win all year, is hosting UCF, and they're leading UCF right now. So tell me how much of a true difference there is between a lot of teams. Obviously, that's a very extreme example, and it's still early, or that game isn't finished up yet. But I mean, there is not a significant level of difference between a lot of middle-of-the-pack teams in this country.
Well, South Florida must be doing something really right, because UCF has to recognize that, you know, after beating Cincinnati, they've got an opportunity to get into the conversation just a little bit more. You know, slide their foot in maybe the second 4 out or something like that if they continue to win. A loss here sets them back, you know, to where they were before they beat Cincinnati, maybe even further.
Yeah, that game's over on ESPNU. USF with the lead with about 2 minutes to play in that contest out at the Sundome.
Boy, that would be a hugely disappointing loss for Johnny Dawkins and crew.
I mean, if not for the job that Tim Jankovich has done in his first year as the full-time head coach, I would probably give Coach of the Year to Johnny Dawkins right now. If I had a vote, I would give it to Jankovich, but I think Johnny Dawkins has done a tremendous job this year at UCF in his first season.
I would agree that you know, the way he's brought that team around, and they're in the top 25 in categories defensively, including #1 in field goal percentage defense. I mean, that's a huge start.
Washington draws the foul, and that'll take us to our final timeout. 3:32 to play. Shutting down the current form of Fifth Third Arena in Cincinnati, trying to extend the second longest home court win streak in the country. 3.5 away from doing it. 13,176 in attendance tonight for the final game at Fifth Third Arena in its current form. You'll see Cal take on Utah over on ESPNU tonight. They're currently in the last 4 in of Joe Lunardi's bracketology. First 4 out, Vanderbilt dropped out despite a very good performance early against Kentucky on Tuesday night. They blew a 19-point lead, though. So they're on the outside looking in. Houston began the night in the next 4 out, and a loss on the road tonight. May not hurt them all that much in that category, but it's certainly not going to help them try to build on their resume. They were looking for that signature road win tonight, and it's been all Cincinnati most of the night.
And you know what was shocking about that graphic right there? And I know they suffered some key injuries to Sumner, particularly at point guard, but Xavier now in the last 4 in. At one time beginning of the season, I know a number of us thought that they could be the surprise Final Four team.
I agree, and we saw them play tremendously well here against Cincinnati. We were lucky enough to call that rivalry game between the Bearcats and Musketeers as Gray hits it 2. And it's been a shocking fall. Marquette looked fabulous against Xavier last night. They started to look like the team that beat Villanova back in January.
Yep. You gotta plug that hole in the boat. Xavier does.
We want Tobler chant has begun. There's Zach Tobler watching his teammates work. Late in the clock, Trey Scott got it blocked, and here comes Houston. Ray will finish.
Rob Gray determined to get his points.
Yep.
Averages just about 20 points on the season. And this little mini comeback, it just may not be enough time.
He's got 14 points on 13 shots tonight. The zone defense at Cincinnati busted out. You pointed it out very aptly, Lenny, early in the game, that zone was really giving he and Dotson and Robinson some problems. Copain hits.
He got a grab, too, no call. But I think Mick Cronin recognizes that at about 6-minute mark, he had his team spread out and go to their delay game. And it kind of took away their momentum, and momentum on the defensive end as well. And somehow or another, Houston's found their own.
The timeout used here by Houston with 2:02 to play. It's down to an 18-point game. Zach Tobler made his way to the front of the bench. And then Mick Cronin said, nope, not yet. And I think you said it accurately in the last timeout, Lenny. Mick Cronin doesn't want his team to suddenly give, we're up by 26 points at one point. He doesn't want to suddenly take his foot off the gas and let Houston get back into this game regardless of what the deficit was.
Coaches have the worst nightmares when it comes to having to lead like this with 2 minutes left and to see it dissipate. And I see Mick Cronin's probably seeing that right now, right before him.
Of course, leading you up to Saturday primetime, presented by AT&T, our Sonic Blockbuster, the rematch between 2 of the most heated rivals in sports, Duke and North Carolina. Again, the Tar Heels needing a win to clinch the outright ACC regular season championship, coming off that tough offensive performance at Virginia. A very entertaining game at Cameron. This one will be from Chapel Hill. It'll be Saturday night.
And again, spread the floor. Look to milk time off the clock. And then kind of go to your one-on-one and create situations.
The senior Johnson off to Scott.
Trey Scott put that one down.
Maybe erasing some bad memories from earlier. Dotson misses. Quadri Moore corrals. Zach Tobler's waiting to come back in to this ball game. Mick Cronin's going to take a timeout. Listen to this eruption. time, Troy Copain
Not yet.
is going to get his ovation as well.
Soon, but not now.
Okay. Renee's waiting for it too. Mick Cronin actually was about to, or he thought he was going to come out, did Troy, and then Mick grabbed us and no, not yet. So he's got something special planned for him. That was just for Zach Tobler.
Yeah, Troy Copain's gonna get his own solo.
Yep, and I think Johnson will too.
Solo adoration.
Maybe one more final shot here. No, that was blocked by Dotson. Why not? Final minute.
It's on the foul. Tobler to foul on purpose.
He's standing
He
is right in front of us, and the look on his face when he got called for it was absolutely classic.
Oh, that's the beauty of senior night. And as I said, a guy like Zach Tobler who's toiled for 4 years getting that adoration. Speaking of adoration, there he is.
He will go down as one of the all-time great point guards in the history of this Bearcat program. And that is saying something when Oscar Robertson graces the list of several record columns in the book for Cincinnati basketball.
And I think the thing people appreciate more than anything else is Troy Copain's capable of averaging 16, 18 points a game. Could have played selfishly, but he fit right into this team, as I said, from freshman year until now. He's been what the coaches need him to be. And then finally here in senior year, with this team that's putting points on the board, he's an integral part of that, taking care of it, creating for others. I mean, he's really made his mark. The unselfishness as far as, and the leadership as well. Just got to take your hat off to the young man, and I've seen him enough to really appreciate his game. How about that?
Tobler will go to the free throw line on a technical foul against Houston.
The stars are aligned. Zach Tobler gets a chance to score one more time.
He has 3 points tonight to tie his career high. He has scored 16 points all year. And now Kevin Johnson will get his moment. The consummate professional, as Mick Cronin calls him. Often getting the other team's toughest backcourt assignment on defense. And this year having a bust-out offensive year as well. Cumberland to beat the clock. The longest home court win streak in the country belongs to Oregon. Cincinnati will extend the second longest home court win streak to 26. And Zach Tobler will get an ovation. Two minutes played, 3 points. High level of efficiency tonight for Zach Tobler this evening. Bearcats to 15-2 in American Conference play, 26-4. It is the 4th time all time that the Bearcats will have an undefeated home record, the first time under Mick Cronin. They'll finish their season 18-0 at home on a 26-game home court win streak, the second longest overall in Bearcat history. And on senior night, Troy Copain scored 11 points, had 5 assists, added 4 rebounds, and got to say goodbye to the home fans as they shut it down for a year at Fifth Third Arena. $87 million renovation project here in the Queen City. And they will open this thing up for the 2018-2019 season. Stanford and Colorado are coming up. Bill Walton's going to get weird. Dave Pasch's going to be awkward about it. It'll be a lot of fun. I love those two guys. They're going to make it really fun for you on the other side. From Boulder, Colorado today. Can't wait to see what those two have in store for us. This is going to be a fun night. We are getting ready to actually get a talk with Troy Copain, hopefully in moments here in Cincinnati. So we'll get an opportunity to talk with the veteran. A Cincinnati victory, 65-47. Back in moments. For now, Adnan, Karen, Jeff. Guys, take it away.